You know who did not like the president's speech on Afghanistan? Breitbart. Now, of course, run again by Steve Bannon, who left the White House less than a week ago. A series of Breitbart articles calling President Trump's speech a flip-flop on sending a modest number of troops to Afghanistan and a modest number of increased number of troops, and said that in the wake of Bannon's departure, it was the first major speech, quote, it confirmed the fears of many on the right that without a strong nationalist voice in the West Wing, the president would revert to the same old fare that Americans had voted to reject in November. Steve Bannon, you may or may not know, was an opponent when he was the president's chief strategist of sending more troops to Afghanistan, and had an idea about contracting it out to mercenaries, but saw it as a kind of a cesspool or a quagmire after 16 long years. Some others on the right, including Laura Ingraham, usually a Trump supporter, have criticized the move as well. But by and large, the mainstream media are giving some applause to the president for his speech. And there's a couple of reasons why. One is he is kind of in line with the military / political / media approach to Afghanistan, which is, yeah, we don't want to send another 100,000 troops there, and we know it's probably an unwinnable war, but we can't just cut and run, to use George W. Bush's phrase, because it will again become even more of a terrorist haven as it was in 2001. So the president, clearly a reluctant warrior on this, you could tell from not just his body language, but some of the things that he said. And he didn't deny, in fact, he emphasized the fact that he had changed his mind. I thought this was highly significant, and I think it's one of the reasons the media have given him high marks. The president said right up near the top of the speech that his instinct was to pull out, that he had always been skeptical. You can find tweets from the president, 2012, 2013, where he said, you know, let's just pull out of Afghanistan. There's no reason to spend any more American blood and treasure there. But after listening to his generals, and he's put generals, of course, at the top of his chain of command, H.R. McMaster, Jim Mattis, John Kelly. He didn't send as many troops as the Pentagon wanted, but he is sending what is expected to be something like 4,000. Will that make a difference? Who knows? But what the media liked about this is because, let's face it, the president's reputation as defined by the mainstream media is that he shoots from the hip, that he pops off, that he doesn't think things through, that he goes on Twitter and sets a new policy on transgender people in the military, or whatever. And in this case, not only did the president change his original position by his own acknowledgement, and that's not something he acknowledges very often, but he also spent months with an intensive review of this matter, challenged his generals, says, how do we define success? And so media critics and pundits kind of like the deliberative process. You know, whether you agree with his solution or not, it's not radically different from what was tried by Barack Obama, who also didn't particularly want to be in Afghanistan. But the fact that it was a deliberative process, that he changed his mind, that he kind of went with a consensus and he didn't just stick with his original instinct, showed, in the view of the people now praising it, you know, a certain growth, a certain maturation of him as president. He said things look very different when you sit behind the desk in the Oval Office. Every president goes through a version of this, where the bromides of the campaign trail fall away when you are confronted with the complex realities of governing. Now, this is probably the most high-profile instance in a matter of war and peace, where President Trump going through the same thing. And I think that's one of the reasons that he has gotten some pretty positive reviews from press corps that often doesn't give him very positive reviews. Now, whether he can stick with that or will pick a new Twitter fight or get involved in some other distraction, we will have to see. I'm not making any predictions, but for this moment at least, the president getting a pretty good reception from not only some political folks and in his own Republican Party, but from the media as well.